Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Zinc Bar here in New York City as part of this year's 2015 APAP Winter Music Conference here in New York City. Returning home to his hometown of New York City is jazz guitarist Bobby Broom. And as you might know, about 3 years ago, I profiled him with his Deep Blue organ trio. And he has a brand new record out in which he's paying homage to the great jazz trios ranging from the great Pat Martino to Wes Montgomery. And this album is called My Shining Hour, in which he dives into some very important standards which are very important to the American songbook. We sat down earlier and we talked about why he differentiates the different types of music styles with the organ trio versus his jazz guitar trio. And also, we sat down and talked about some of the most important elements of him growing up listening to this music, and also reflect on the great life of Kenny Burrell. As you might know, Mr. Burrell was probably one of his many influences as well as mentors as a jazz guitarist. And we sat down and we talked about why he's very important to the idiom of jazz music as well as the blues. Bobby, welcome back to New York. As always, this is an honor just to be sitting down with you. In fact, the last time we broke bread, it was with the Deep Blue organ trio at Dizzy's. And tonight, I think this is great because you're playing with your trio and you're going to be playing music from your current album, My Shining Hour.
Right. Yeah, I'm always happy to be back home, you know. Yeah.
Now, this album again, as a departure from the Blue Organ Trio, in that this time you're playing some standards, and I want to know how you decided to play some of these unique songs, because some of these songs are popular songs that have been popular in popular pop music, but also in the jazz vein as well.
Well, these are old pop songs. You know, these are classic pop songs, and some of them are from the 20s and 30s, so way before our time. And I've kind of shied away from doing a whole lot of that. You know, I do play pop songs, but they're pop songs from our time, our generation, 70s, 60s, R&B and soul and pop music is something that I gravitate toward to try to find interesting ways to interpret that music and just present new material to the jazz repertoire. But mostly I do that because it's close to me personally and emotionally, so I can express things musically on those newer songs. But that's not to say that I have anything against the older songs. I mean, they are classic for a reason. I love them. I learned to play jazz music by familiarizing myself with that material. First and foremost. So I felt it the right time at this point to approach some of that music, and especially since I feel that our group has established a bit of a sound, and we could, you know, utilize that material to express ourselves.
You know, I want to ask you about the trio in just a second, because you have a very, very, very special, I guess, love for the trio, both with the organ as well as the jazz trio with this recording. But you go into deep, you go into like Sweet Georgia Brown, and I think the song that I like about this whole project is the Tennessee Waltz. And I remember the Patti Page. That was who made that popular.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just a tune that is in the ether in America, as all these songs are. They're just part of the quilt, and we just hear them over the years in various settings, television and radio commercials, and our parents' record collections, and you know, just movies, and it's just, they're all over the place, and for good reasons. The ones that stick are just great compositions. So yeah, that Tennessee Waltz is just it's a beautiful melody, and kind of haunting and sweet. So it's one that I picked up from playing with Sonny Rollins, and you know, he's got a way with picking good material. So I became intimately familiar with it from working with him, and it just came to mind when I was programming this recording.
You know, when I think of the great trios, even jazz piano, and you play Sweet Georgia Brown, which was done by the great Oscar Peterson. But when we go into great jazz trios, I think of Pat Martino, I think of Wes Montgomery, I think of Grant Green, I know I'm Kenny Burrell. And what you have done over the last 12, 13 years is that you've split up. You've done the funky stuff with the blue organ trio, and then you do the traditional jazz with the jazz trio. What is it about that trio or the trios that you really find that you're at home musically with?
Well, you know, the organ trio was it's kind of a no-brainer. Barring adding a saxophone, it really is a self-contained unit instrumentally. You know, the instrumentation is historically established, guitar, organ, and drums, and so you've got plenty of harmony, and you've got guitar or organ as the lead voice, and you don't need anything else. Again, because of the precedent set by the great trios of the past, Wes Montgomery's trio, Jimmy Smith and Kenny Burrell, Jimmy Smith and Wes, Grant Green and Larry Young, I can go on and on and on, Pat Martino and Don Patterson. This is music I've absorbed for a lot of my period of learning this music, and it's very dear to me. I just love that sound, and the organ was the first jazz record I was attracted to before I was even aware of jazz. Was Charles Earland's Black Talk in 1971, and that was just a record that I just loved and played every day because I liked what was going on. The other trio, the guitar trio, is something that I started as a way to expand and grow. Back in 1990, I was bouncing around Chicago and doing what jazz musicians do or did at that time. You know, you have a core group of people that you know and associate with, and you try to get a gig, and you get a gig and you start calling people, and this person's not available, that person's available, and after a while of that, I was, this is kind of a dead end situation. I need to establish a group. I need to write. I need to write for a group. I need to develop my ideas about my own musicality and how I sound. And so I put the trio together, and I don't know what possessed me to do a group with no piano. I think I'm bold in that way, and it was something that was at that time frightening, in that there was a lack of harmony behind me when I was playing the single lines in my solos, and often at that point in the melody, I'm better able now to support my melodies with harmony at the same time. but then not so much. So it was a challenge, really, and I grew to love it. I grew to love the texture, the sound of that group. It's very different, and it's, you know, I always tell people, man, that's been the most difficult nut to crack in my career, is to make that group realize what we realize about it, like to make the rest of the world realize what we see and hear. I mean, it's evident on the records to me. So,
because I wanted to add on to that, because when we go back to those trios, including yours, I think that Wes Montgomery, his chops got so much better playing without a piano, or playing with, I mean, and it's same with you. I noticed that each album that you've done with the organ and just your trio, your chops have gotten a heck of a lot better.
Well, I wonder if that has something to do with just trying to negotiate the environment sonically, you know. And even if you're not playing, like, I'm not one to just rely on playing a bunch of notes, but just trying to deal with the sound and the texture and the way that the weight of the notes that I do play. And it's maybe an ethereal kind of subject, but I think that has something to do with the end result. You know, when you have those things in mind, even if they're subconsciously in mind, that you're trying to fill out or properly balance the shape of the group, the sound of the group. We've gotten better at it.
You know, last summer you had a fantastic amalgamation, and you opened up for my favorite rock band, Steely Dan. Bobby Broom organization, and you guys did 52 dates. And I gotta ask you, because you said that pretty much the Deep Blue organ trio is done, and now it's, you know, it's almost like Pat Metheny. He ended the Pat Metheny group, and now he's doing the Unity band. So it's kind of like you
gotta keep going. You have to, you know. I mean, I'm in it for the long haul, and it was unforeseen, but things happen and things change. And so when I was presented with the opportunity to open with for Steely Dan, my thought was, you know, they wanted an organ trio and I didn't have one. So I, you know, was ready to decline the offer. And then some folks pulled my coat like, man, what are you doing? You know, you better think about this a little bit. So I went through my Rolodex and you know, drummers, I have quite a few drummers that I like. But I wasn't really sure about the organ chair, and then I went through my thought process and arrived at Ben Patterson, who's a New Yorker now, but he was around Chicago for quite a while. And although we never played together there, I do know some of the groups that he worked with, and heard him and figured that he would be the right fit, and he most definitely was. Yeah. I was very, very happy with the result and actually planned to record that group.
One of the guys that you have had a wonderful opportunity to record and actually tour with, and he was a mentor to you, Kenny Burrell. Mm-hmm. When you speak of great jazz guitarists, one of the things that I've noticed about him, and me listening to him growing up with my grandfather's jazz recordings, he was able to play the most swinging blues licks. Mm-hmm. But, man, he could play some of the most funky soul licks, too.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's all coming from the same strain, as you know, that African American aesthetic is, it runs deep, and it runs through all of our music. And so it just makes sense that he would be funky and soulful and bluesy, because to me, it's all, like I said, it's the same strain.
What is it about Kenny Burrell's legacy that people are missing the boat on? Because everyone talks about these great jazz guitarists, but sometimes I feel that Kenny really does not get the due that he deserves.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things, you know. For some reason, I think that there are a certain number of allotments for these slots of greatness. And sometimes things don't work out. But Kenny, you know, I don't know that Kenny is. He's considered a great. He's an NEA jazz master, director of jazz studies at UCLA. I mean, you know, the history is written. Whether people talk about him or not is kind of irrelevant. He's on 1 million Blue Note records.
And don't forget the stuff he did with Chess Records too. I mean, he's put some bad records out.
Yeah, and those things on Verve.
Yes.
You know, so remember that time when it was after West died, and I think Verve was trying to figure out, like, what are we gonna, you know, we need to fill this slot. And I know George did a few records, and Kenny Burrell did a few of those kinds of records that were highly orchestrated, and man, woo! See, and that's the thing about him, is that he could deliver, like, you know, when you talk about a singer, you know, just delivering the song. Kenny could deliver a melody, and you know, and then that carries through to his soloing, where it's the emotional content, the weight of what he's saying, not how much he's saying, but how he's saying what he's saying, that is special about him and players like him.
What did he impart into you as a guitarist?
Oh man, well, you know, it was at that point me just gleaning through osmosis, really. I mean, we were playing together. Really, he didn't approach it as like a teacher-student situation. I mean, you know, he was basically imparting that you guys are deserving of this position, and that's why you're here. Let's play, and that's the way we did it. But just to be next to him and to hear his approach. One of the things that I really admired about him was his ability to execute chord melodies, you know, and the orchestration and in that he was able to get. So you know, those things you just ingest and let them, you know, simmer and you don't know how they really affect you in the end, but they do. Yeah. I'm glad you talked about him. Him and Stanley Turrentine, to me, it's Stanley Turrentine. I talk about him all the time as one that people don't talk about enough. But
And Stanley, I'm glad you brought that up. There is a very, again, the blues was, and his brother Tommy was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he did these incredible soul records that people, I think, kind of slept on.
Yeah, he did a bunch of soul records and pop, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons why he is maybe disregarded by some, because he wasn't afraid to play a variety of styles of black music. But man, it's one record I go back to all the time, is in tribute, you know, in memory of. Yeah, and it's a small big band record, and he plays a lot of horn on that record. He plays as lyrically as much changes as anybody, and always has. And you know, I mean, there are other records. I got hip to a Shirley Scott record, a live record with Cranshaw and Bob Cranshaw and Shirley Scott, and I don't remember who the drummer was, and Stanley, and man, just, you know.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Zinc Bar here in New York City as part of this year's 2015 APAP Music Winter Music Conference here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank Tiffany and all her staff at Music House Entertainment Management for showcasing some of these wonderful artists tonight, including the great Bobby Broom on guitar tonight with his trio. Also, I'd like to personally thank all the festival organizers at APAP this year. Also, please, when you have the time, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.